Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. हमारे साथ I have with me Miss Rami Desai, who will throw some light into what's happening in Bangladesh. Bangladesh certainly erupted. A lot of people said, "Yeah, India is next." Let's try and understand what really happened. क्योंकि हमको पता है deep state and this and that and all that stuff I keep talking about, the Gehra Rajya, as I'd like to term it. That's a fun term, Ramiji. Namaskar, that I like to call it because when I put deep state on YouTube, they ban me for 6 days. I call it the Gehra Rajya.
Gera Raja sounds rather funny.
क्या करो यार, you have to, otherwise ये इतने बदमाश हैं, they ban you. आपका पूरा बोलते हैं ना वॉल्यूम कम कर देते हैं आपकी.
So
So
I
you
don't
will not reach
understand. Are they
anybody.
not banning you for talking about them banning you?
No, they, if you write it, ये सब में उसको इतना अभी AI has not been able to pick up हिंदी अभी तक.
After you revealing their secrets.
हाँ, वो AI has not been able to pick up हिंदी, तो मैं thumbnail पे गहरा राज्य लिख सकता हूँ. No problem, nothing will happen.
Oh, well done.
Oh God. So, Ramiji, tell us what's happening in Bangladesh. Yaar. This place just erupted, and a lot of people connected to two, three things. One is too many India visits, the face off with America sort of a thing. Uske baad China gayi, China jaake she came back. So, my reading is the Sino-Wahhabi leftist alliance literally broke loose on her, the entire alliance. Is that what you see? And what do you see as the game going forward? Because protests have finished, but pitai is still happening. So, what's
See,
your
Aadi, as we were talking earlier, there are a couple of things here. It's not just, I've always said this, that a conflict is not just a singular issue that triggers something. There are multiple issues and anxieties and vested interests that come together to create something of this level. These protests that we've all been hearing about in Dhaka were no small protests. Like thousands were arrested, over 200 killed. It was and the same battalion, the RAB, which was sanctioned by the Americans pre-elections, if you remember, were the same ones who were brought on ground. These paramilitary groups were brought on ground to counter these students. So these were tough protests for Sheikh Hasina, and I think Sheikh Hasina is being tested over and over again. And I think now this new term that she's won has rattled a lot of feathers. It's rattled a lot of naysayers, a lot of people who don't want to see her in power. So you have to ask yourself, who are these people? Because we've seen kind of like a trend. Before elections, we saw last year, towards the end of last year, we started hearing about American interference on ground. The Americans were very strangely interested in this elections. They kept calling for fair and free elections. And let me tell you, it was not just the Americans. It was even Australia. It was even Europe. And they all came
Canada?
together. Yeah, I mean, countries that really have nothing, no great close connection with Bangladesh, all came together. And it's almost like the West, the white man's world, always comes together to virtue signal a Southeast Asian country, and to talk about or to warn them about having free and fair elections. I mean, rich coming from them. Look at what is happening in the US. Their most important presidential candidate has, there's been an assassination attempt, and 9 days into that, the Secret Service chief, Cheetle, did not even have answers to basic questions like when was the assassin spotted? How did the assassin get on the roof? So, to me, it's almost, it's in a way funny, but it's also very insidious that you can point a finger at other countries when this is what is happening in your country. Now, we saw election interference, we saw Americans warning, we saw the Western world warning Bangladesh, but we also saw sanctions only on Awami League candidates, leadership of the Awami League, as well as the Rapid Action Battalion, the RAB, because they said that it violated a lot of human rights. The West consistently called for fair and free elections, as if already saying, casting doubt that the elections would not be fair and free.
Yeah.
Now, one has to ask oneself, why is this happening? Why are they interested? But it didn't stop there. No matter how much of the interference continued, once she won the elections, they again started getting very agitated. And this is what keeps happening, that uh, all sorts of dissent is taking the shape of protest, not just in countries like Bangladesh, countries like India, but across the world. And these protests somehow seem to become political. We have seen this in the CA protests in India. We've seen it in BLM.
Palestine.
We've seen, I don't even want to talk about Palestine because I haven't stopped seeing this fight for Palestine in any protest that happens across the world. Today, Tommy Robinson's protests, did you see in London? It's got a
Can you imagine?
resounding amount of success, and it's very heartening to see that. But one of the first things that I noticed was there was no safe Palestine and we are with Gaza sort of flags there, so you become so used to seeing that narrative permeate into any protest, anything that happens, or have people like Greta Thunberg comment on it, that you tend
By
to
the way,
wonder.
there's another one brewing in our neighborhood, huh? Which is your Balochistan.
Oh yeah, she's commented on Balochistan also.
Mhm,
uh,
mhm.
and I was just like, Greta, you were like a climate kind of child activist, and now you are, you know, just meddling in everything. Remember what happened with the what's that called, the singing competition, the Euro singing competition, which is the world's biggest singing
Eurovision,
competition,
Eurovision, Eurovision.
which was in where was it? It was in Malmo, and
Hmm.
Gaza landed up in Malmo for a anti-Israel, free Palestine. This thing, protest. So I'm just saying, obviously she's a recurring figure in all these protests, irrespective of the topic or the expertise. But protests are taking a political form, and this is exactly what's happened in Bangladesh. It's a student protest, but BNP के सब जितने student leaders थे, they jumped into it. BNP gave an open support, openly came out and supported the protests. I mean, you know, you can't help but question, why is everything coming together? Why is everything, becoming political with one common enemy? So obviously, it's a very dubious sort of a situation. Yes, it's true that the protests have calmed down, students have calmed down, and that's great because nobody wants to see situations like that, especially with the youth. A lot of people have tried to deeply analyze it and say, well, out of there, some 117 million, 37 or 32 million are unemployed, and therefore, unemployment is a problem. Sure, those might be problems, but this is just too large scale. This comes together with so many other things that have been happening that are anti Hasina, that you wonder. And like we'd spoken last time, we'd also spoken about what Sheikh Hasina had said about a white man trying to form a Christian state. So when you look at all of this as a whole, you realize that it's not as simple as it seems. It's not everything meets the eye, and that there are external agencies that are more keen to have somebody else than a Sheikh Hasina. Now, obviously the question is who? The CIA, the Americans, these have been coming up over and over again. And let me just also say this, that this is nothing new. Pakistan has always been supported by the Americans, and Jamaat is very strong in Bangladesh. So Jamaat-e-Islami also jumped into the fray in these protests. They jumped into other protests also. Also, that they say that Jamaat-e-Islami and many other groups like this are still supported by Pakistan. Now, if you remember, anybody who knows Bangladesh history will know that when the freedom struggle was happening in Bangladesh against Pakistan, the support that Zia got was from the CIA. And there were huge amount of allegations also that that there was a hand in Mujabir Rahman's assassination. So these are things that have not been new to Bangladesh, and I think history is repeating itself. Um, you know, we also have to understand that uh, these are facts. These are not. This is not conjecture. It's not anything new. They say that the President Sheikh Mujibur, and let me also tell you this: that these protests, the quota system, the reservation system, was brought in by President Rahman. So therefore, a lot of people feel that the quotas that are given to students are helping Awami League uh, in some way in winning the elections or strengthening them. And BNP made that also into a political sort of agenda. Also, Sheikh Hasina's proximity to India. That is one of the reasons that you know, they keep sort of filling these protests or whatever problems that they have with like this little anti-India uh, sort of sentiment. And that is also very dangerous for us. Because what happens is that's not the sentiment of an average Bangladeshi. Let me tell you, an average Bangladeshi, politicians in Bangladesh, especially people who have some sort of relationship to the freedom fighters, have great amount of have great amount of respect for India, have great amount of love for India, because they haven't forgotten the help that India gave them towards their freedom struggle. Now, what happens is when this anti-India sentiment is pushed forward by a handful of people, the Jamaat-e-Islamis, the Pakistan-backed, so on and so forth, other external agencies back, we on social media tend to react. And then everybody forgets who is pulling the strings, and it becomes like a negative
Watch, watch.
cycle.
Can I add something if you don't mind? And I'd like your comments on this also. One of the biggest things I think works in the anti-India game is the Islamic factor, where the radicalization of that region uh, has been kind of ongoing. It's not something which is stopped. It's ongoing. That entire region is like that, and it's been done by a lot of known, as you mentioned, Jamaat and everybody else. uh, this also, as the radicalization grows, the anti-India factor will also grow up.
See, of course it will. See, let's look at it very clearly. Nothing is going to be as simple or as plain as it was even 20, 30 years ago. Even
Yeah,
then things were complex, but we didn't have so many levels of, let's say, interference or technology or geopolitics
technology.
at stake, right? And like I said, a lot of things haven't come out in the open because it's been international media and the English speaking media has been very, very focused on the northwestern frontier. And I've always said this, everybody knows about Pakistan, Afghanistan, Balochistan, Jammu and Kashmir. The whole international media used to comment on Jammu and Kashmir like it was their own backyard. The northeastern frontier, these countries, there seems to be not much interest in the media focusing on these things that are happening. Now, of course, there is increased interest because of Myanmar and just
Manipur.
because Manipur and social media has come in, media attention has become more. There's better ways to relay, communicate instances, situations. But we have to look back historically and look at what the antecedents of these problems were to really understand that this is not something that's just out in the air and gossip or a little bit of rumor mongering, but it really does have some solid base. There's this investigative journalist, and he's a former South Asia correspondent of the Far Eastern Economic Review, called Lawrence Lifshutz. I hope I'm pronouncing his name properly, but it's something like that. In a webinar that was organized on the occasion of 45 years of the killing of Bangabandhu, Mujibur Rahman, suggested that the whole episode be investigated thoroughly the assassination episode, because Zia would not have moved without American backing. And he very clearly said that this needs to be investigated. Why has it not been investigated? Weeks before the coup, Liv Schultz said that Zia was meeting with senior members of the US Embassy. He said that we also know that he was with the CIA station chief in a private meeting in Dhaka. And we also know that there was tremendous tension within the American embassy over what happened with the then ambassador,
Ah,
some guy called Boster, Ambassador Boster, who was very distressed and stressed. And, like, he said he was very, there was a lot of tension. And, he he had given instructions that all the embassy staff would have no contact with anybody planning or even thinking about the coup. Now, these are very, very serious allegations. So, if at that time there was CIA interest, there was people allege that the assassination plot had a hand. And like I said, America was always closer to Pakistan. So this seems very, very, somebody who wanted independence from Pakistan, who was sort of, how we had the father of the nation, is what he is to Bangladesh. It would be easier to just wipe him out, and maybe that's what he did. And this has been said, but it was never investigated. Then today, even podcasters like yourself, like, who concentrate on defense and security, can pick up on, and as you have picked up on, these instances and put these things together. So it's become easier, and I think we should call a spade a spade. And I think Bangladesh would make for a very, very strategic location to have control on. The Americans have always believed that they can control jihadi forces. They don't learn from their past mistakes. It's not because they're not, they're stupid, but it's because they don't care. So even right now, the pressure that was built, like we spoke last time, St. Martin's Island was of great interest to them, which Sheikh Hasina doesn't want to give, because it's also the proximity. There's the Chittagong Hill tracts. There's the idea of the Christian state. There is the bomb zones in the Chittagong Hill tract that are fighting against Sheikh Hasina. RAB had to again go there to conduct operations. There's this interest to make a larger transnational ethnic geographical territorial claim. We know what's happened in Manipur. We know that this had happened on the Indian borders also, where there were American interests, there were Baptist interests, there was an interest in creating a Christian state, converting people. We know what's happening in Myanmar as well. So when you put all of this together,
kind of makes
um,
sense.
my fingers always point towards the West. Yeah, China, we have our own problems with China, and there is a deficit of trust and so on and so forth. But this kind of stuff always happens with Americans, not with the
I
Chinese.
didn't want to do this because all the fingers point at me. I said, point all of
Let's
them
not,
like that.
is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, point all of them that way. There's nothing pointed towards me then. You know,
Yeah.
but see, the interesting thing that you've mentioned, and this is something that this platform has been talking about for a while. I call it, as I said, the Gehra Rajya, and they have their interests and they keep doing these nitty natty things, and they've been doing it all around the world. It's not just here; it's
Hmm.
happening all over the world.
Hmm.
Having said that, you mentioned something very interesting about 1971. And that's something which is, to me, a very different story. Uh, that the American interest in this part of the world, you said Zia met with the Americans. What do you think was the plan? What was the game to be done in this area? What was the plan?
Look, this is what, like, an investigative journalist of very reputed, magazine is saying. These are things that have been said before as well. There's always been some amount of, like, conjecture and, like, uh, finger pointing. But the plan, I suppose, was this, that it should, somehow be a part of Pakistan and remain being a part of Pakistan, not have its own independence. And if it had this sort of uh, Pakistani control, then the Americans would have more say. in the region. And the Americans, like I said, Pakistan, comes much later. The Americans were interested in this region even before that through the Northeast, which is one of the areas that they were very interested in. If you look at the West, if you look at uh, the early leadership of NSCN, somebody was settled in London. There was they were registered at the UNPO. They had an office at The Hague. There was somebody, in Thailand and all these areas, Naypyidaw, Thailand, all the American embassies there were, and especially in Naypyidaw, were seen as CIA outposts, where information was collected, and these were considered very important outposts. So it's always been about control. I don't believe, really, I don't believe for a second that one of the things that the West always has an edge over us is their foresight. So they're always thinking like it's almost like 50, 100 years, ahead. What will they need? What are the areas that will be important? How will they be able to control when they couldn't control the Northeast, when they couldn't wrest it out of I've spoken about this earlier on your podcast, that there was this interest in making a crown colony of the Northeast. That obviously wasn't the Americans, that was the British, that while they were leaving, that they would still be able to have control on the Northeast. And they've done the crown colony business in a lot of places. It wasn't, however, successful in the Northeast, thankfully to us. We would not have let it happen, but the other reason being that it was very expensive, and by then they didn't have the money to go into such a remote area. But one of the reasons that they wanted to convert it and make that territory was to counter China, the tea trade wars. Also, they realized the need for minerals. That time there wasn't this sort of idea of heavy rare earth minerals or critical earth minerals, but there was an idea of what they would require. See, why did they go into Myanmar at the when the British went into Myanmar? They specifically went that far because of the timber. This was when they were
Yeah.
at the peak of shipbuilding. They needed a lot of timber. This is one of the reasons in India that they brought in the forest tax as well. Reserve forest kya hai? ठीक है. In the long term, it's worked out for us. Whereas we still have forest cover and these are reserve forests. But this sort of blatant sort of bringing in these reserve, semi-reserve forests, so on and so forth, was so that they had access to the forest, but the communities that lived off the forest did not have access. So therefore, there were a lot of tribal movements against the British because of the Forest Act. So they've always thought in advance. What do they need? They've always thought in terms of resources. And we don't seem to, analysts don't seem to understand this. They look at a conflict as a conflict um, which is one layered, which is a conflict that is a recent conflict because of some geopolitical interest. No, these are age old aspirations, age old inspirations, and well thought out plans that have taken years. Of course, they've taken years. Some have materialized, some haven't. But they've never stopped trying. Now, you look at Myanmar also. We're looking at Myanmar right now. But Myanmar is going to take the shape, Aadi, of exactly what they did to Africa. Why did they go into Africa? They went into, what did they do in Africa? It is exactly what we are seeing here. First of all, they encountered the tribes. So, in this so called civilizing mission, they converted the tribes. Once they converted, there were some agencies, some groups, some dictators backed by the West, some not. There were ethnic conflicts, boundaries were pulled badly, so communities were divided, causing long term damage to the continent, because right now you still have communities that fight with each other, ethnic, tribal, transnational ties. Look at the way they've pulled the boundaries. It's like a ruler liya and they've cut it like this. This is in Africa. Now, Myanmar also the same thing is happening. Why should we be surprised? Why should we feel that, oh, tomorrow the junta, now General Heng has said that he's going to hold elections, he's going to do a census in October and hold elections next year. Why should we be very positive about that? Elections or no elections, how do we know now all these different
It
ethnic
won't work.
groups?
Mm.
See,
Correct.
it's absolute human nature. This greed that people have is natural. And when you have the wild, wild west sort of situation going on where militias are working independently, have autonomy, have control over mines, have control over, you know, rare earth material mining or ruby mining or whatever that makes them money, can grow poppy. Like I told you last time, I'm not saying this, UNDO is saying this, that, you know, their their production methods have become so advanced that they're growing such fine poppy that the price has gone up by 4 times. You know, so if you have control over this, however federal your system is, however federal your government system is, are you suddenly going to follow the rule of law? No, you're
Hmm.
not, because you're not in the habit of following rule of law. Do you know it takes 20 years for an insurgent to mainstream himself, and that also with majority of people it doesn't happen because they're not used to living a normal life. You know, so how are you now? Children have gotten involved, young people have gotten involved. How are you going to get them back into the mainstream and make them follow the rule of law? Is
Especially
any
Myanmar, where they've been fighting. Sorry, but they've been fighting for 30 years now.
I'm talking about, yeah, absolutely. I'm talking about Myanmar only, you know, but 30 years, yeah, there's been fighting this, that. It's always been, you know, the things have always been difficult. But now you add all that conflict, all that money to the fact that drug business in Afghanistan has finished. 90% of the drug business has come to this place. Now we have the new element of cybercrime. The northern Kokang region um, is known for its cybercrime,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's the northern region and some other regions also, which the borders
Of
from
China.
uh, Thailand. There's gambling there because gambling is banned in these countries. So a lot of them come here for gambling. But apart from that, there is also the problem of cybercrime. So what they're doing is all these scams that even that we see in India, a large amount of them are being produced in these areas. So China is also a recipient of that problem, because a lot of the people, so about 40-50 Indians have also been rescued from, it's called cyber slavery now. So they've also
Yeah.
been rescued. It's basically they go there as IT tech guys, and you know, they don't know the political scenario, they're naive, this, that, they promised big pay, they're promised long contracts. So they go there, once they go, their passport is taken away, their mobile phone is taken away, and it's a sweatshop, it's cyber slavery, and they are made to work on scams. Now, because majority of the people working are Chinese, you know, the Indians thankfully are less, the Chinese are more. There is a lot of complaints that were coming to the Chinese saying that you're not doing anything to bust these crimes across the border, you know, and because the scams then are made in Chinese first and tested out in China, there's a huge cybercrime issue where people are losing their money. It's really funny because you know all the testing is in China, then it gets converted into English and comes to countries like India as well. So this is very problematic. Now all this industry is running there, Adi. Why do we think that somebody will want to do a 9 to 5? You know, so
That
I
area is
don't.
notorious, but yeah, for this cybercrime, this thing, it's bloody notorious. I mean, the NIA just busted a whole racket of these guys sending people there right now. That entire racket
No,
got busted.
one guy, he was, I think he was actually not in Myanmar, but a lot of these criminal syndicates work in some areas in Laos and things like that as well, you know.
Thailand and Cambodia and all
Uh,
that. Hmm.
so, so some poor guy had come in from like Tamil Nadu or Kerala, I can't remember. This is one of the instances. And he was stuck for like months and he couldn't believe where he was, and he was getting some one meal a day, and then he managed to get to a phone, and it's a very serious thing, and he managed to call up his sister. Then his sister called up the cops, and now whatever said and done, you know, in the last 10-15 years, there's been a great amount of difference in how embassies handle situations. So the Indian embassy went into full on mode and, you know, really did what it did to get these people back. But it's I'm just saying that, you know, there's so much of money, there are syndicates running this. Everybody has a pound of flesh to make in this, including militia slash freedom fighters, whatever you want to call them, that it's going to be very difficult to handle these areas. So it also therefore then makes it ripe for outside countries, external agencies to come and manipulate the situation.
Interesting. Now, when we, look at Manipur, there has been a certain change in the game. Um, of course, there has been a very interesting invitation by the chief minister that tell the cookie groups, okay, come to the National Assembly. To me, that is like either you come or some back is going to break. Because, why am I saying this? I'm just trying to dot connect here because CRPF has been there for more than a month. They take that much time to kind of establish their operations, establish their networks and this and that. It takes time. एक
Hmm,
महीना तो लगता है.
hmm,
And last week we had a couple of these chaps getting caught. Kafi halla gulla happened. And after, beach mein the videos had come down.
hmm.
Abhi phir se videos have started going up. And for me, the easy measurement for what's happening in Manipur is the amount of videos that are coming out. I don't look at the veracity because it's shady. Either side, there's a lot of shadiness happening there which you can't, and people are putting out old videos, new videos, सब कुछ मिला मिलू के वो 3rd May के videos अभी भी चल रहे हैं, by the way. you know so the point that I'm trying to ask you is, how do you see that situation knitting up a little bit? And this is going to be, as we were talking offline, you mentioned this is going to be a problem area for the future. ये चलता रहेगा. It's not something that is going to vanish overnight. So how
Adi,
does a common person understand this dispute, battle, whatever you want to term it as?
Adi, you know it very well that these are, long-term issues because they have long-term, prolonged emotional processes attached to them. It wasn't like one day somebody decided to come and start manipulating the situation. No, there were fault lines, there were certain ethnic conflicts, there were certain differences, but those were all managed. Now, this is what I say, and you know, I I can be real. I like to be a realist in situations like this because no problem happens overnight, no problem is solved overnight, according to me. But
Absolutely.
I would also like to, always remember that this is not the first time things like this are happening. Like I have spoken to some people about the situation. Like we spoke about NSCN taking out that notice, right? Um, and this is what I had to say, that the Nagas and the Meiteis have been friends for ages. There are very strong relationships between them that cannot be broken so easily. We must start seeing things for what they are. In my opinion, NSCN is playing a political game. It's trying to build up political pressure. The agreement, the ceasefire agreement, has not been completed with the government of India, and the demands that they have, some of them, are never going to be accepted by the government of India,
Ridiculous. Hmm.
in my opinion. Uh, but I think they think this is a great time to, politically put some pressure, and um, they've taken this notice out, but I don't think that is representative of all the Nagas. The Nagas have, in a very mature way, kept their distance from the conflict because it would have just then become absolutely impossible to deal with. I don't think I don't think it's as if they didn't care. Of course, they cared. These lands belong to them too, and they have been also original inhabitants of certain areas. But I'm just saying that I don't think what's happened is people are seeing that with a lot of offense, and they are blanket painting how the Nagas feel. I don't think NSCN is representative of what the Nagas feel. I don't think NSCN can break the age-old traditions that the Meiteis and the Nagas have. And I think if they really wanted, they could have played a positive role, which is mediating between the cookies and the Metis. So I think what happens in situations like this, Adi, is people think with their emotions and they don't think with their, uh, they don't think rationally, and they don't think if, somebody is doing something to manipulate them, Now, what will happen, because they've said this, some people who are emotionally driven will lash out against the Nagas. Nagas are not innocent. And that will then open up a third front. Now, do you want a third front to be opened up? I don't think the cookies want a third front. I don't think the Metis want a third front. You want things to settle down right now. So I think we have to, we've already seen that there has been this huge level of decrease in incidents. Yes, there are sporadic incidents that happen. And yes, there is still a problem of trust and
Trust.
safety. You can't go into, different areas. That needs to be bridged, of course, and
It will
that
take
would,
time.
but it's going to take time. But in the meanwhile, there are going to be a lot of people like this and groups like this who are going to want to come and take advantage of the situation. But a common man has to know, and leadership of communities have to know, to do better than to sacrifice a history of relationships. See, their fathers and their forefathers must have encountered similar problems. This is not the first time, in history, in such ancient history, that a conflict has arisen. And they have done good work, rational work, for these communities till now to still be friends, to still have relationships. So, I don't think these relationships should be brought to a point where there is a complete break and a point of no return,
Hmm.
because you would have defeated the purpose of all the negotiations that have ever happened historically by your own forefathers. I think this is the time to just sit back, do as much as you can for relief work, do as much as you can for people trying to do some amount of work with people in IDPs and displaced camps. I think that's the kind of stuff that we should be doing, and
Hmm.
we should ever so often try to have conversations and dialogues with community members across the border who are trying to have dialogues with you as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also,
You
I
know, one
think
of
that's
the,
right now.
if I may just, add the question to what you're saying is the Nagas that they put out this, hum karenge, ye karenge, wo karenge. They've done this before as well, and they didn't do anything, right? They somewhere around, I think, January, February, something like that came out also. कुछ बोला था इन लोगों ने, we will either you guys sort this out or we will come in, and something like that they said, and they didn't. They just kind of backed off. But one effect that it made, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it brought down the level of violence to a certain extent.
See,
Is
I
this
don't
another?
See, I don't think that was the reason it brought the violence down. The violence has been in a decline for a while now. And it's been in a decline since last year. The levels of violence that we saw in May or June or whatever, you can't compare what's happening. Be realistic. Like, people have to appreciate, the positive changes that have also happened. Yes, there are sporadic issues, and there's no running away from it, because it's shameful and it's very, very sad. However, they have now become sporadic. Yes, that level of trust is a different thing, that will take time, but it's not going to happen if, you're going to open a third front or now start abusing a third community, or, it's going to happen over a period of time, and with certain government mechanism mechanizations that are going to hopefully, be in full process and in full throttle. Um, but this is a difficult situation. I think one of the key things in this is, like, a lot of people are talking about, oh, we want, our ST rights and this and that. I am a great believer that people do deserve equal rights. People do deserve equal land distribution. People do deserve, to have ST status if the processes allow them to. If the government, NCST and whatever the processes are, deem them fit to be scheduled tribes, who are we to say no? That has been my simple argument from day one. But I also think there is a time and a place to ask for it. You know,
Not
right
like
now,
this.
yeah,
Not like.
if you're going to ask for it, who is listening? We're just trying to now bring everything down. People are trying to
Yeah.
bring everything down to,
Not like this.
yeah. So, I think everything right now has to be thought via the lens of strategy, not via the lens of emotions, however emotional the situation might be. We have had, they've said, oh, India doesn't care, and this has come from all sides, in Manipur. India doesn't care. We've had how many soldiers from the rest of the country lay down their lives in Manipur?
Hundreds, yeah.
You know? And you don't even know their names. So I think this sort of narrative should be kept away. I think any political leader or community leader or local person who talks like this should immediately be, um, sort of immediately be pulled up, because this is again not something that you need.
Umph.
Um, but let me also say this: one of the reasons that the NSTN also took this post out was because there were accusations of certain groups that
Huh.
were attacking Christians. Now, that also must be condemned, because
See,
the
I have a I
problem,
have a I have a
I
bone to pick with them on this. So
correct, but
please,
let
yeah.
me just fine tune what I'm saying. The reason I have a problem with this is because I don't think you can attack a community or a people for the faith that they follow. But here's the problem: the problem is the missionaries. The problem is, a lot of these people, when I was also there, the first thing that I noticed was there were missionaries. When I reached there were missionaries already there from Kerala. What the hell were they doing in Manipur? So the problem is the missionaries, because the minute you are trying to, if you're going to take advantage of the situation, take advantage of, um, the poverty and the abject disillusionment of people who have been through the conflict, then it is going to upset other community members and disrupt the social fiber of the state. And I think the anger should be towards them, not towards a common man. Because I've always said this: there's no problem with changing your religion. If there's a spiritual experience, you should want to change your religion because you feel spiritually about it, not because somebody is handing you a couple of things that you need at that moment, because that then is abuse.
Yeah. I the bone that I was asking for, and this I've read. I mean, I don't know personally, but this I've read a lot of places, and I think I saw feedback from both the communities on this. Um, they said, "Yeah, why are these guys talking about only churches being burnt by the Meithis? Aren't they Meithi Christians?"
Right?
So that kind of created a rift between now the Nagas, which was supposed to be the balancing guys.
See, NSCN has used the word Christianity. That, like, they're using that trump card that, oh, Christians are being attacked and we're not happy with Armbite and Gaul and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
I wish, as much as I condemn it, I don't think that anybody bases their faith should be attacked. But I wish
yeah,
that alongside that, they also condemn missionaries who try to take advantage or who try to, unnecessarily exploit the situation. If you want to be fair, then be fair both ends.
yeah. I'm
But
gonna ask you one last.
somehow the whole missionary activity and, the kind of issues that comes with their activities, somehow that always gets sidelined. I don't know why.
You mentioned Kerala, and I wanted to ask you a question. After that, we're going to get into the audience questions as well. But Kerala is interesting because when this thing started up on the 3rd of May, um, I think on the 14th or the 15th, I had done a show about this. That guys, this is a drug thing, is being fueled by that. The thing is about this and that. It's about the land. It's about the drugs. Let's look at it clearly. This thing I had said, and I had some kind of intel coming in. Ki sahab, a lot of the money that was routed to start up this battle, right, to light the fire in the beginning, was sent from Kerala.
Hmm.
And when you mentioned missionaries from Kerala, I mean, it just that I literally had a deja vu.
See,
So,
मिशनरीज जहाँ जाएंगे,
hmm,
पैसा तो आएगा ही. How do they do their work? Now, where that money is going, who knows? Like we last time also spoke about the European Union money that was coming in. Who knows where it's being used? I don't understand. Why is it not being ever given anywhere else to any Hindu area? Yeah.
वो पहुंचा है कि नहीं पहुंचा अभी तक पता नहीं है,
I
because
don't
that
know.
church is also come out and said हमारे पास कुछ नहीं आया भाई। तो जो हमको जो
पता नहीं कहाँ जा रहे हैं, क्या कर रहे हैं।
मेरे ख्याल से
So,
यूरोपियन यूनियन वाले ही खा गए।
anyway, they should also know that India is no longer, they love to see us as poor, some, what, 200,000 euros that they are sending. India doesn't need this kind of pennies any longer, the kind of money that has been already sanctioned for the conflict, for the floods. Uh, I
That's
just feel that they need to start seeing us in a different light. Maybe European Union needs to go to Ambani's
probably the
wedding.
next, yeah, probably next 3-5 years we'll have to send them aid because they're heading that way।
Who knows?
या
Who
तो ये
knows?
खाना रखो वहीं रहो, यहाँ नहीं आना।
Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? I
Poor
mean,
Tommy
अगर
Robinson has started his fight, but I feel a tad too late.
too late,
Yeah,
too late.
too late.
The problem with people like him is that when you want to do this thing right, you don't go whole hog picking up enemies in every sector in the bloody this thing. So everyone is out to get him. So people like this don't last long, so that's the problem. He's taken a
But
panga with everyone.
yeah, but I'm happy. I'm happy to see the kind of turnout of crowds. Like
Yeah,
last time, it was only
and
10,000.
the slogans,
Yeah,
I,
last time when they did
I
this
don't
was
want
only,
to repeat that slogan here।
yeah,
Not
yeah,
gonna
yeah. We
happen।
couldn't because अभी तो तुम्हें बस shadow ban कर रहे हैं.
नहीं नहीं बहुत बैन हो
Figure
जाएगा फिर।
it out later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the point is that this region, starting, let's say, I would say the borders of Bihar,
Hmm.
West Bengal,
Hmm.
Bangladesh, not the entire northeast. I mean, Tripura is peaceful. You've got Arunachal, which is touchwood doing really well.
See, मगर
Issues
त्रिपुरा भी है
हैं,
ना. हाँ.
but you've got this little state Manipur, which is creating trouble. Now the perception in India is Manipur पूरा आग लगा हुआ है।
Hmm.
Like आग ही आग, ओए होए, मतलब मणिपुर में तुम लैंड करो एयरपोर्ट में, every building is burning there, and that's not the case. It's in
मगर
certain those 4-5 districts।
but you see, uh, generally that's how uh, once you see things on television and the way they show things, that's how you feel, right? Like you'll walk on the roads and that's all that's going to happen. That may not be true anywhere. Sometimes conflicts are shown. Like I know people who've just been to Moscow, and I know somebody who came from Moscow recently, and they're like, oh, things are great, and life is going on, and nobody, everybody seems very happy, and like, because the war is happening in the outskirts. So,
Yeah, Moscow is
obviously,
80 miles, 100 miles from the border. Yeah, you're
so
right.
that's a problem. So that's a problem with, I suppose, the visuals that we get and
Yeah,
how much people want to talk about it, how exciting it becomes, that then you feel that this is all that's happening. Like it's like
actually.
tourists coming to India and thinking that snake charmers and elephants, you're going to see them on the road, generally anywhere you go.
Mm. Yeah, well, they use, there were certain politicians that would put a snake charmer right there, get out from the jar. And then you go into your hotel room, one guy is sitting there also. So
That's what
that's
they
the perception. That's the perception. Funny thing is, I interact with this guy in USA for a podcast one odd time here and there. And let's get into questions after this.
say.
When he hears me speak, by the end of it, he tells me, "How the hell do you know so much about my country, your country, and what's happening in the world? Why don't we know about all this stuff?" I
Because
said,
they're
"Because
not
I read."
interested. Yeah,
I
they're
said,
not
"Because I
interested.
read."
They're
He
so
was so shocked when I told him about the National Endowment of Democracy. He's like, wait, wait, wait. He's noting it down and stuff like that. After the podcast finished, he said, "Yeah, you tell me about those three agencies." And I told him, and he's noting down, he's Googling, and he's like, "Whoa, what is this?"
maybe Adi, you're not talking to very smart people.
No, no, this guy is pretty cool. Yeah, he got banned off. By the way, for a lot of his uh, COVID activism, he got banned off Facebook, Twitter. He got thrown out of everywhere. So he got.
Ban means legit.
So he knows
He's
what he's talking about. But see the kind of propaganda that runs, that people just don't know what's
absolutely.
happening. I mean, we don't know what's happening even. We just don't have any idea what kind of Tigdums play the back end. It's crazy. Only by the way, this US embassy Akash Banerjee thing came out, so
Uh,
everybody's talking about it. But previously, when this damn thing has been happening since 98, I believe, 98, 99, they've been curating people and all that stuff. Nobody spoke about it. पता ही नहीं था लोगों को ये हो रहा है. So,
I see.
and you know,
Something good.
guys, जरा like करो वीडियो को, subscribe करो. Let's get into uh, let's get into some of your questions. Some very interesting questions, by the way, huh? So you're going to be challenged. And of course, yes,
Okay.
please do, if you can, contribute towards this channel using the QR code or the PayPal link in the description, or you can also send super stickers or super chat. Sabse pehle, Abhijit Saman Saab says, does Bangladesh have an alternative to Hasina? Not talking about the opposition like Modi has a Yogi or Shah. Does Sheikh Hasina have a future effective political successor?
So that's been the question on everybody's mind, and I think that's a very important question because that's what we need to see is a succession line. She has children, and maybe that may be the case, but it hasn't been announced. But I'm
Not
sure
yet,
she's
right?
a very, very, very smart woman. She's seen some very tough times. Um, she's not going to leave Awami League just like that.
Don't think she's going to announce it because looking at the, if I may, sorry, looking at the kind of political situation in Bangladesh, anybody who announces it, that's the last day they're going to be there.
अभी नहीं करेगी, but at some point
Mm.
she will have to, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so at that point she will, but nobody knows who it is right now. It's just guesswork.
that's true. GIL, the West do not like immigrants, encourage all the discontented people like in Bangladesh, elsewhere to migrate to the UK and Europe. Help them to the West gets, yeah, basically taste of his own medicine. Help them so that the West gets a taste of their own medicine. They've
Help,
taken
help.
all these kachra there. Let's
Huh.
try and help those guys so that the US and everybody gets a taste of their own medicine. I think the protest that you're mentioning is that.
See, I think the West is getting a taste of its
Yeah.
own medicine. You know,
I
the
mean,
most
you look at
contentious issue,
the
whether
the
it's in
capital
Europe.
the other day.
See, have you noticed American elections? Nobody's talking about the economy. Nobody's talking about things like education or money. They're only talking about immigration. The most contentious issue right now is immigration. Tommy Robinson's rally, immigration. European Union, immigration. France, immigration. uh, Even if the left has come out, it's a combination of multiple far left parties. It's not a single party that's come in. So they are getting a taste of their own medicine, but I think it's important to have them as a buffer. So I hope that they're not completely run over for
I'm
our sake.
pretty shocked with what happened in America the other day. I mean, I've been just trying to visualize in my mind that somebody did that in India. Man, people will
The
be on this.
assassination attempt.
Yeah, no, 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 no. The when Netanyahu was speaking in the Congress
Speak
outside.
outside, but inside too, he got 54 times standing ovation.
यार उसका क्या करोगे when these guys can't step outside safely without their bodyguards? वो तो they will be lynched.
That is true. The far left that always claims to be the most peaceful, and there's always like the peace sign, and we love and accept everybody, is the most violent. Their protests are never safe. They are out. If you go and ask a lefty, what do you think should happen with Trump? He should die. There's
Yeah.
nothing less than that. So they are wishing death upon everybody while claiming, and again, this is what perceptions and social media does, that it clouds your mind. But we also think, oh my god, the left is more articulate, the left is more peaceful. The right has always been associated with violence. Wherein I don't think if a far left person was to come to me, or I would, I'm not, I may not be a great fan of a lot of far left leaders, but I never wish them death.
It's very crazy when something like that happens, and the way they desecrated their own flag, the Liberty Bell, and this and that. I mean, I was like, what
But I have
is?
to say, I thought it was a very powerful speech. Whether
Yeah,
you like
that's
Netanyahu, you don't like Netanyahu, the fact that they are so confident and that confidence shines through their words. There is no confusion, there is no problem in articulation of what they want. And I think that's the way people should be speaking, in a clear, precise manner, instead of all this, like, I have no idea what, Kamala Harris says. I don't know what she's talking about. So, I don't know.
Kamla auntie is very special. Yeah, come on, don't say that. A lot
No,
of
no.
Indians will be
I,
heartbroken. I said
it,
Indians, huh? Not Bharatiyas.
no, I don't, I don't care if you like her, you don't like her. In my opinion, I don't understand what she says. I don't understand what she wants, what she's going to do, what her ideas are. There's no clear agenda. According to me, she is the luckiest person in the world.
She's not lucky. She went through a coup. Okay, and she won. Nothing else. She played her cards
Uh-huh.
well.
At the right place
Michelle,
at the right time.
Mike
You know,
Obama backed off, and
it could have been Michelle. So I'm just saying,
Mike,
without
not
without
Michelle. There's nobody called Michelle. It's called Mike Obama. Come on.
you rather
Uh,
rude, actually.
I know. But you can imagine the first time they actually came out with her name. The second thing, that was the second tweet below that was, "Hey Mike." Okay, Partha says World Economic Forum stopped exploration of at civilizational structures. Sadhguru, a part of the WEF, I don't know if he is or not, says Kalyug is over. He means hegemony. Is India's civilizational history going to be used for the FDI that is leaving China?
I'm not quite sure how to
Interesting.
answer that question. But look, I'll have to, because I'm not near a charging
Yeah,
point. I'm just
we,
going
we
to no.
how much
I can take 5 seconds to just shift my, but I have to close my video
how
first.
much time do you have? We'll just take another 5-7 minutes, quick answers, and finish off.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to last. I have like, I think 6%.
Okay,
Actually,
shift hello.
shift kar deti hu, it'd be
Yeah,
easier.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just to
हाँ, camera,
huh.
mic नहीं.
No, I'm saying till then you can take that
Yeah,
question.
that question is very interesting. पार्था का बड़ा जबरदस्त सा सवाल है. I mean, I have it in my second screen, so I'm going to. World Economic Forum stopped exploration at civilizational structures. Well, I don't know how the World Economic Forum is connected. Yeah, Parth, if you can tell me, I'm a little foxed with this, but civilizational history. देखिए, one of the things I'll tell you, they don't like the civilizational history part. Okay, so there is not going to be any use of it because the Ghera Rajya does not like it. If you read papers written in the Chatham House and the Council of Foreign Relations, and multiple other these leftist organizations, they will actually tell you, they will show you that a whole lot of history and the whole lot of revival of history that India is trying to do actually goes against their values, if I may, you know, values. So that is something which is very interesting, because if somebody is going to say that they will recognize India's civilization, well, they'll have to recognize that we are hundreds and thousands of years old, which I don't think they're ready to do. So, it's I don't think that is a balancing factor at all. So they might say, okay, fine, ye wo and all that stuff, but I don't think they'll agree to your civilizational value. Mr. Rao, thank you so much. More than people, Gehra Raja at work. Good work, Adi. Huh. Thank you.
It's catching on.
Yeah, everybody calls it Gehra Raja. A lot of people gave me a lot of spiel first and said, yeah, don't call it Gehra Raja, yaar. What is this little translation Gehra Raja mean? I say, bhai, maine rakha, it's a perfect noun. Now everybody's saying Gehra Raja, mein theek hai. So Batman says, because of this protest, Sheikh Hasina's party popularity has decreased. Will she be able to win the next election? Also, if she loses, then pro-China government comes into power and Bangladesh becomes another Maldives.
See, think about whether she can win the next elections when she's just won the election this year might be a little bit um, too early right now to decide, because a lot can happen In the next couple of years, she can, again, there could be instances where she becomes very popular. But of course, anti incumbency is a factor. This time also, we saw that anti incumbency is real, not just with Sheikh Hasina, but across the world. So that is affecting her. And that is why a lot of the opposition and people who don't want to see her in power are using as many sentiments. This is very much like, for example, in India, we saw this whole idea of constitution khatre mein hai, samvidhan khatre mein hai, you know. It's like nobody knew kaise khatre mein, reservation khatam ho jayega, you know, but really nobody understood why somebody is saying this, but it caught on when people felt that the constitution khatre mein hai. The same way, oh, you know, you know, this anti-India sentiment that they keep trying to manipulate and say that, oh, she's so pro-India, she's so pro-India. Nobody asks themselves कि उसमें गलती क्या है? Why should neighbors not be friends? You know, why should you not have strong relationships with your neighbors? You know, the fact that that Bangladesh right now is perhaps one of the least radicalized countries, Islamic countries, you know, I mean, it's kudos to her. The fact that Northeast India has the kind of stability that it does is when she came into power, she started handing over insurgents and insurgent group leaderships and started dismantling training camps that were on that side, which were Pakistan backed, you know. So she's done good things for us, and we of course have done also equally great things for them, and that's how neighbors should be. Magar ye problem hai that this is how reputations and popularity is damaged, is by spreading this sort of rumor mongering, which people don't ask why, what, how, you know, what should be the problem with it.
Interesting. This is an interesting question. Even after having good relations with Bangladesh, why has the illegals issue not been solved?
How do you solve the illegal you know, immigration issue? The fact of the
Okay.
matter is that these are very long borders, very porous borders. It's not very easy to plug these borders completely. One of the ways wherein you do curb immigration like this is if you have better economies, which is what India's always tried to do with Bangladesh, is support it the way it should be supported to have a stronger economy, a vibrant, secular, democratic uh, country. And, you know, that is one of the ways that you contain migration. Now, from India, nobody is trying to go to Myanmar or Bangladesh, you know, because there is a certain amount of stability here. That's the only way you can really, unfortunately, stop this sort of immigration. Otherwise, the borders cannot be 100% sealed. Yes, there can
Yeah.
be tracking. There is a lot of tracking. When Taliban came into power in Afghanistan, um, a lot of a lot of people were caught uh, trying to make their way through India via, you know, Tripura and all, make their way through India to go to Afghanistan to fight alongside the Taliban. You see, with just on a side note, one of the prerequisites of jihad is territory. When the Taliban came, took over Afghanistan, it fulfilled this prerequisite. And this became a great sort of
Motivating factor.
encouragement, motivation to a lot of radical minded people. And therefore, we saw this little influx of people trying to come in, and but they were going there and they were caught. So, aisa nahi hai that our, you know, authorities in the railway or our BSF or our, you know, other security forces are not at work. Of course, they are, but to plug it entirely is impossible.
Yeah, and plus, fencing is not yet fully finished. Once the fencing finishes, it becomes a little better. But how do you deal with those nalas and stuff like that? It's just too bad. Those little drains which are there around the place, and it's
Physical fencing तो वैसे भी नहीं होने वाली 100%. You know, this is going to be a mixed model type of fencing.
yeah,
And of course, you know, right now we're talking about the Indo-Myanmar uh,
वो भी है, Bangladesh भी है. There's a lot of
Bangladesh. There's a considerable amount of fencing that's already been done. because there
Yeah.
used to be a lot of smuggling that used to happen. So it's not as if the Bangladesh border is not fenced. But still, you are as strong as your weakest link. And anybody who needs to immigrate, who is driven by this obsession, will find the weakest point. And, when you have, honestly, we're talking about the Northeast, but when you have governments like you do in West Bengal, you can't stop them by fencing, because there are people sitting there with open arms welcoming them.
It's funny. It enrages me. I didn't want to say anything. I was about to, but I just said, forget. Doesn't matter. Leave it. Thought provocator जी, thank you. इंडिया में कमाल, यूएस में कमाला, अंजम का क्या होगा? यार यूएस में क्या है वो? इंडिया में एक वो पान मसाला है ना, कमला पान मसाला है, क्या है
I
ना?
have no
There's
clue.
some Kamla Pan Masala or something like that. So sponsored by Kamala Harris, sponsored by Kamla Pan Masala.
See,
So
Abhi, Aaj ka poll says she's leading. She's
yeah,
47%. Trump is 42%.
I don't
It's
buy any
not.
of these damn polls. ठीक है,
See,
especially in
I, I
America.
would I would take it at face value. 47 to 42% is believable, because the kind of support that she's going to be able to garner from the immigrants, the far left, the Democrats, the amount of money that she got in the first day is, and now Soros has come out and he's openly said that he's going to back her up. So it's believable, but I hope, you see, if it was Biden, when the Trump assassination happened, I was 101% sure it's going to be easy sailing for Trump.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, I don't, these,
Kamala coming in,
yeah,
I find it's going to be a tough thing. It's not
I
going to be.
don't buy these percentages because they're going to rig the election, right? For me, right now, it's 50-50. They're going to rig the election. Let's see who wins. Because if Trump doesn't, there's going to be a big freaking fire somewhere. And that's not going to be anywhere around in this part of the world. It's going to be there. Sumit ji says, if you want to bring lasting peace to the Northeast, remove these constitutional form of government and bring the Gaupuras, tribal chiefs who are elected, and bring them in the decision making. I
I wouldn't
I don't
agree
have
with
an opinion.
I wouldn't agree with that, because there are lots of non-tribals also in these areas. What happens to them? Also, we do have self-governing systems which are fairly autonomous, like the ADCs and the hill councils.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
problem is them functioning. Like I have said this of the cookies also, and I don't know why the cookies hate me for it, because it's actually in support of what their demand is. That ठीक है, उनके hill councils से hill councils ठीक तरह से चलते नहीं है. Find out ways to be able to streamline the processes in the Hill Council, though it's not going to be easy, because the Hill Council is not made out of one tribe but multiple representatives of different tribes. But if they want financial independence, give them financial independence. Then the
Yeah.
responsibility lies on the Hill Council's shoulders, and people who feel that there hasn't been enough development, the center hasn't cared about them, or the state hasn't cared about them, will then hold their own representatives to account. So I
Yeah.
think that can
No,
be done.
it's not
But,
that easy. Mm.
but the other problem also is, see, right now ADC and HC के बीच में difference क्या है? The financial independence and the judicial freedom. I don't think the judicial freedom will be so easy to grant. Financial freedom you should give and let them figure it out. Anyway,
Yeah.
that is, there are very many nuances to that, but I don't think you can take out governance from them, because there are non-tribals as well. What happens to them, and also how is it going to help?
Yeah.
That an ADC or an HC cannot do.
True. Rami ma'am, Adisa Pranam. It's always a pleasure to listen to you, ma'am. Encyclopedia of the Northeast Bharat. Request you to do a talk someday on Sikkim and Darjeeling Hills if possible.
सिक्किम में क्या ही बात करें, such a beautiful state, it doesn't have any problems, conflict ही नहीं है, तो you know but it's an interesting place. And Darjeeling, of course, also is a beautiful place. I have traveled those areas when I was younger very much. I actually went to Bhutan by road, you
Wow.
know
From
through these
Galefu.
areas.
Galefu.
Uh-huh.
How do they pronounce it? Galefu.
I went to Punsoling to Thimphu.
Funsuling. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, but Kalimpong, Darjeeling, these are really beautiful. Of course, it's just now very overpopulated. But an interesting thing in Darjeeling, Kalimpong areas is, and this is a lot of first-hand information that I've been getting, is there's a lot of migration there with a lot of Muslim population that is non-Indian, and there were settlements of Rohingyas as a stopgap. And it's very funny because buses came and dropped them. And when people kind of figured it out, this was one of the instances, the next morning they disappeared. So it
Hmm.
was that organized.
Yeah. अभी तो नॉर्थ बंगाल का नैरेटिव चल रहा है, so I hope that thing gets pushed up. I think that's going to be important.
Yeah, but just look at the sentiment behind it.
No, no, the good sentiment, North Bengal, ki yaar, we don't want to stay with West Bengal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but that's not a telling sentiment,
yeah, but
you know.
who's going to stay with Didi, yaar?
Hmm. We know who's going to stay with Didi.
Okay, fair enough. uh, geostationary of Naga Kuki Mizo people need to be addressed. Okay, geostationary. Did I read that wrong when I read it first time? Civilizational bounding exists. Bonding exists. See, I want to. This is he brought a point about bonding. Now, do you think these guys have some age-old history connection that you can bring out? Say, भाई तुम लोग साथ में रहते थे यार क्या कर रहे हो? Because one of the biggest things that comes out here, and I've been reading the British documents and stuff like that as well, that cookies, even the British used to call them non-indigenous people. Is there
See,
some connect that can be brought about?
see, the fact is that you've already now lived side by side, right? For over a century. I'm not going to
Hmm.
get into I'm not going to get into the historical uh, legacy in terms of indigenous, non-indigenous, because I think the British finally are to blame to even use the poor cookies, to use them against the Nagas to, resettle. Like they've done all of this movement, they've cut the boundaries so badly. They had no idea about cartography. Wherever they pulled a line, they've created a problem between communities. But the way that they really need to move forward, in my opinion, is with the idea of the umbrella that they're all Indians. That a cookie that lives in the hills is as a proud Indian as a Methi that lives in the valley. And that is what distinguishes them from anybody who lives across the border. Yes, you may have transnational, some loose ethnic ties or close ethnic ties, whatever you want, that can still remain. Nobody, no boundary can ever cut that. But as long as you understand that this is your motherland and your loyalty lies here, and any uh, any sort of investment in anti-national activity, which we might see from any of the sides, is the wrong way out, is what will bind them together. The
True.
identity of you being an Indian is becoming so important across the world, wherein your passport's becoming more powerful. Your identity as an Indian is becoming more powerful. You're getting more respect. People are drawing distinctions between you and other Southeast Asian groups, other South Asian groups. An Indian is an Indian. An Indian no longer is mixed up with a Pakistani or is mixed up with, any other community, because of the kind of place that the community has made for itself with pride, that you would be better off understanding the value and the good luck of you being on this side of the border. Because honestly, Adi, if you were on that side of the border, as much as Myanmar is a beautiful country, has great legacy, great heritage, so on and so forth, you would not have peace. You would live in violence. And this would not be a short gap thing, but it would continue like this,
Yep.
affect your future generations. So your child, any given day of the year, has a better chance being a part of India than anywhere else. That is what
That's
we're people together.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. You're getting appreciations after appreciations in the chat, by the way. This
Is
is
this
a sad, you know, comment. Bijayji says, you were talking about missionaries. Money goes to my wife and daughters were converted into Christianity, and the couple who converted them got a large sum of money. It came from abroad.
correct? That's how these missions are so successful. And, it's very sad because I see that Vijayji's surname is Agarwal, and these are communities that are so, so tight. We always think of these communities as being very like familial and very close in the larger sense of the thing. So if they can permeate into communities like that, can you imagine disparate communities or, communities that are not that tight knit? What happens to that? So yeah, there is no doubt that money comes in, that it's like a give and take sort of situation, like I said earlier on, that there isn't a spiritual need that suddenly one day you feel, or over a period of time you've studied the religion and therefore then you feel that no, this is more suited to my life or my beliefs. It is because of this. Even this time we heard how many people, the missionaries saying, oh, why don't you convert and we will send your children to boarding schools. I remember meeting women many, many years ago. I remember meeting women across the Northeast whose um, husbands had either died because they were parts of insurgent groups or they died in insurgent violence. And they were sitting there doing, whatever work that they knew how to do, handicraft work or whatever. But their children were studying in Delhi, and young children, because they were in missionary schools and they were converted. You know, what happens with this is then obviously very problematic because you're using money. My question to you is, if you're really a believer and you're a man of God, then help people out for the sake of helping people out. Don't do it again, don't do it for greed of getting some brownie points.
You know, I'll tell you the opposite side also. Huh? I had a friend, won't name who this person was. So this person, not from a very rich family in the Northeast, Assam.
Hmm.
So person gets converted, studies, gets all the amenities, if I may. And today the person is a full-fledged Tilakdhari Hindu. So when I asked, I said, "What the hell is this?" The response came, "यार पढ़ाई करनी थी, पैसे तो थे नहीं, कुछ जिंदगी बनानी थी."
Oh
Well,
dear, now that's the flip side of the coin. See, now it's
there
stuff
are
like that. And now you want a believer or you want a head count? The problem is they
no,
want a
no.
head.
There are people, especially मैं आपको बताऊं, असम में this is very rampant. They convert for the bloody the amenities. पैसे पूसे ले लेते हैं, ये सब कर लेते हैं, उसके बाद घर में वही चल रहा है, you know.
But that's
And I'm
exactly what I'm saying. Na, that do they want? Then you have to ask yourself: do they want do they want a believer or do they want a head count? The thing is, they want a head count. The minute
yeah,
you can send back to your boss that, look, we've converted these many people. A, you look good, so the chances of your promotion are higher. But apart from that, if you give a head count, a lot of vested agencies, countries can assess, as to how much loyalty do they have on ground, because they feel that if, they're converted, their loyalties will be on the other side.
yeah. And by the way, this is a girl, huh?
Wow.
Married, sindoor, mangal sutra. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Very openly, she said, "Yeah, what?
But that's exactly, then that's what will happen.
Yeah, I remember you back in the day. You were chapel, ये वो and all that. Not that I have any problem with it. जाओ chapel जाओ, जो मर्जी करना करो. But it's like it पैसे देते हैं यार. I took the money and I had fun. Can you imagine this person 16, 15, 16 years of age? They realized what needs to be done in life.
Yeah.
And the last sawal I'm going to pose in front of you, Mr. Rao says, karma comes back to the missionaries in Kerala. Now they're wanting help from Hindus to counter jihad happening in Kerala. The situation is very bad.
So let me tell you something about this. It is. He's very correct. There is and there was this, what was it called? The Love Jihad, and if I'm not mistaken, it was called Love Christ or something like that. But it had a word, because then they started going after Christian girls to convert them.
Ah, ha 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 ha.
क्या था उसका? It was Love Jihad, and it was
I
Love
got on.
Cross. Love
Love
Cross. Love
cross,
Cross.
love cross,
It was
love.
Love Cross. And they started going behind, and it was not just there, it was even in Kanyakumari, because there are a lot of missions, I believe, there. And that became problematic. And that's when people started saying, oh, love jihad is a figment of a Hindu's imagination, is when the FIRs of the Christian girls who had been converted started coming out. And it's like, you know what, you know, how you can think that, something that is so devious can only be impacting one community. It could impact all communities, all children.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, it's quite crazy. Um, it's this whole situation, is something which I believe can only be sorted out with one, a lot of internal work, as you mentioned, and two, a
Yeah,
little bit of a hedging that you can do in geopolitics going forward. I think if that's something you're able to do, which I always say, गहरा राज्य के साथ जो negotiation चल रही है आपकी,
yeah,
उसको अगर आप ढंग से करेंगे तो you're okay. Otherwise, this damn thing is going to continue for a while because the
exactly.
Sino-Wahhabi leftist alliance is the weapon of the गहरा राज्य. There's just no question about it. जहाँ वो चाहिए होता है उसको चिपका देते हैं. A lot of people didn't believe me when I uh, initial stages. I used to tell my Israeli friends, guys, China is behind this. They said no, and now they say, China is behind this. I said, yeah, okay, thank you. I mean, it's really really interesting. But Rami ji, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure chatting with you. यार आपके साथ हमेशा बैठ के you learn quite a bit. Today, the 1971 angle that you brought out, it's going to make me dig quite a bit. Let me tell you that. Uh, and offline, I want to ask you who this person was so that I could find out a little bit because this is kind of going to burn my head till the time I find out kya hai ye. An American angle to the 1971 war is very interesting. And apart from that, of course, you are a marvel as far as the Northeast is concerned. And I hope people make use of everything that you have inside. Thank you so much once again. Jai Hind.
I think really I only ever come to your show so that this end part I can hear all these nice things that you say about me.
No, yeah. I
But no,
trust me, my audience knows I refer to our conversations. I refer to our offline conversations certain times, not the ones that are not supposed to be referred to, but the ones that are supposed to be referred to. And I actually talk. I've mentioned your name so many times that remember that we've had a chat with her, and this is where it comes out. So I've learned a lot.
thank you very much. It's very kind of you. But also, you have a bunch of bright audience. Somebody I just saw here also mentioned grooming gangs, and,
Yeah,
you know, that's exactly the problem. People think that it's going to only hurt one community, but kahan se kahan, even in England, they've had these gangs, they've
Arey,
had everywhere, So, yeah, it's always great to be on your show and, talk about this stuff
since
in.
you are reading the chat, I'm sure you've read all the compliments here as well.
I can't see very well. So, like
ल
certain
लगा लो
certain
चश्मा कुछ नहीं होगा, कोई बात नहीं. Everybody knows you wear a pair of specs.
so I mentioned grooming, I saw, But no, thank you very much for having me, and it's also very enjoyable to have a chat with you and to answer all these questions. I hope I was able to do justice. Thank you, Abby.
More than that. Thank you. Jai Hind.